بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. Okay, so inshallah we're going to continue with Surah Al-Hijr, Forever Preserved, verse 75. And again, I thank you for your patience as we were trying to make things better. They got a little bit worse in terms of the video, but that's okay. All right, so let's go straight to verse 75. Surah Al-Hijr, verse 75. So just to give you some background for those of us that did not join us last week, we had just finished reading the passages, the verses which spoke about the destruction of the people of Lut alayhi salam, and how the habitation was overturned. And at the conclusion of that horrible end they met, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says here in verse 75, Inna fi dhalika la mutawassimin. Inna indeed, fi in dhalika that, la surely, ayat, plural of ayah, signs, lil, li, yani for, al mutawassimin. So lam, when it is connected to al, it becomes lil, right? For the mutawassimin. Who are the mutawassimin? Well, let's see how it's translated here. And then I thought this was a very interesting word, which is not that common in the Quran. And so we wanted to actually go into it a little bit. So let me give you the flowing translation for 75. There are great signs in this for those endowed with intelligence. Does anyone else have a different translation for the word al-mutawassimin? If anyone has a different translation, I'd like to know what other translations are out there. The one I found was surely in this. Okay, so that is for those who contemplate. Another one that I got was surely in this are signs for those who see. Okay, anyone can tell me? Can anyone tell me the root word for al-mutawassimin? Can anybody make it out? What is the root word? What do you think? Anyone? Anyone want to take a guess? Smile while seen meme. Very good. I believe that's from Ayah, and she is, mashallah, taking another tafsir class. Okay, very good. Yes. While seen meme. Very good. So the word al-mutawassimin comes from the trilateral root word, while seen meme. Okay. And that basically means a mark or a sign or a brand. Okay. Brand is not a designer brand, but like something that brands or marks out something, right? So tawassama means to discern or perceive or to take notes of marks and signs. Okay, so wasama is a mark or a sign. So tawassama is to be able to discern or perceive things from those marks, or signs. Okay. So then, al-mutawassimin, which is referring to people who have this quality, are those who look attentively at outward marks and derive inner meanings. This is a very useful, insightful definition to understand the meaning of this Quranic word. Who are the al-mutawassimin? And again, this is not common in the Quran. This is a rather uncommon word. Okay, so it's not one of those that you come over and over again, so it's easy to remember the meaning of. This is al-mutawassimin one more time. There are those people who look attentively at outward marks and derive inner meanings. So these are people of keen insight, people who read signs and faces and events and circumstances. These are perceptive people, okay? And that's related to the root that it comes from, wasama wa seen me, which means a mark or a sign. So that's how the root word is related to the meaning of this particular word, al-mutawassimin, those who are able to discern, look attentively at outward marks and derive inner meanings. Now, in classical tafsir, you'll find it associated with words like al-mutafarrisin, which are people of firasa. Firasa is another beautiful word, and it means intuitive perception. It means insight. Okay. Sometimes firasa, fa, ra, alif, sin, ta marbuta, firasa, it's explained as foresight. But a more descriptive meaning is intuitive perception or insight. And also, al-mutawassimin in classical tafsir may be described or explained in Arabic as an-nadhirina bi'ayn al-i'tibar, those who look with an eye of reflection, those who are able to look not just outwardly, but in a way, they look at outward things in a way from where they can derive inner meanings. They can derive useful lessons for themselves. And the word al-i'tibar, ibra, ayn, ba, ra, ta, marbuta. This is very common in the Quran, right? It's much more common than al-mutawassimin. So what does that mean? How is it related to at-tawassum, right? Which is the word that we're related to the word we are doing right now. And there's one more word I want to introduce at the risk of confusing you, but also at the chance of enriching you, inshallah, because I found it very, compelling to compare words that are similar in meaning to al-mutawassimin, but are not used here. Because Allah, when He uses a word and not its synonym, it's because the word He's using has the intended meaning for the context in which it is occurring. And because Allah chooses perfectly. So if He chose this word, al-mutawassimin, and He did not choose another word, He did not choose its synonym when He could have, then understanding the meanings of those synonyms helps us appreciate the selection of this particular word for this particular context, okay? So I wanted to kind of present something extra today, which was two other additional words which are not mentioned in this ayah, but we do have one of them mentioned in the Quran a lot, and it's in various forms. And a third one, which I'm not sure is in the Quran, but is related in meaning, and you may find it in Arabic in other places, okay? So I'm going to give you these three words. The first word is at-tawassum, okay, which is directly related to the word in this ayah, lil-mutawassimin. And we've already explained what that means. Now, the word at-tawassum, alif lam, ta, waw, sin, mim. At-tawassum, it's an ism, it's a noun, and it means looking at external signs and deducing inner reality. Okay, so people that are al-mutawassimin engage in at-tawassum, which is looking at external signs and deducing their inner reality. It has the flavor of insight through symbols or outward marks. Okay, and this is completely understandable in this context. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is explaining what happened to the people of Lut alayhi salam, how they were destroyed, what signs of their destruction were left behind, which we'll get a little bit more into after this verse. And if you engage in at-tawassum, then you become al-mutawassimin, then there are signs for you in the habitation of Lut alayhi salam, in what happened to the people of Lut alayhi salam, because we want to benefit from the Quran, and this verse is telling us there's going to be benefit in it for us. There are going to be signs in it for us only if we are al-mutawassimin, if we engage in the act of tawassum, which is to look at external signs and deduce their inner realities, okay? So I'm not going to confuse you. I'm going to actually not give the other word, but I will give the word that is often mentioned in the Quran in its various forms, al-i'tibar, ibra, ayn, ba, ra, ta, marbuta, right? This is very common in the Quran. It's, different forms. Ayn, ba, ra, ta, marbuta, ibra, which means a sign, okay? So who are the people who, benefit from ibra, from lessons, who engage in the act of al-i'tibar, just like this here, by engaging in the act of at-tawassum, we are able to actually extract signs. Similarly, al-i'tibar is actually deeper than at-tawassum, right? Al-i'tibar is taking a lesson by reflecting on what one sees or hears, connecting events to divine wisdom or moral guidance. So it's taking it a step beyond at-tawassum. So that means al-i'tibar is preceded by tawassum, preceded by, you have to look at the external signs to be able to deduce an inner reality. And then if you take that a step further, what is the deduction of that inner reality? Well, it's taking a lesson for yourself. It's not just realizing that there's something deeper going on behind the scene, but then also reflecting, taking it to the next level, taking a lesson for yourself based on what you are seeing or hearing, and then connecting events that have happened, and connecting those events to divine wisdom, connecting those events to moral guidance. Okay, so just to put it all together, very briefly, to put it all together, basically, at-tawassum is perceiving hidden truths through outward signs, almost like an intuitive reading of faces, reading of circumstances, perceiving, being perceptive. Whereas al-i'tibar is deeper, it's moral and spiritual reflection upon events to extract lessons and to be able to then benefit from that in a meaningful way, in a way that is transformative, that changes your action. If this was a bit too technical, then I apologize, but I did want to give something extra for this word, lil-mutawassimin, because it is rare, rather rare in the Quran. So I just wanted you to deepen your experience of the word and its meanings by comparing it to al-i'tibar, which is more common in the Quran. Okay, alhamdulillah, jazakallah khair, Widad. The feedback helps because then I know what to do and what not, what to avoid. Okay, now Ibn Kathir, in much more simpler language, yani not non-technical, non-linguistic analysis, he's basically saying that this is referring to this, indeed, and these are signs for al-mutawassimin, for those who, engage in this act of, perceptive analysis, meaning that the traces of the destruction of that city are easily visible to anyone who ponder about it, whether they look at it with physical eyesight or mental and spiritual insight. Okay, so this is coming close to the linguistic meanings we just presented. And lil-mutawassimin, you can check Ibn Kathir and explains it as those who have insight and discernment. And there's also narration from Ibn Abbas that refer to those who look. Qatada says this refers to those who learn lessons. Okay, so it's basically the same gist. Those who see, those who ponder. And Shaykh Sadi mentions in his tafsir of al-mutawassimin, yani al-muta'ammilin al-mutafakkirin, yani those who contemplate, those who think deeply. Alladhina lahum fikr, let me just give you the English. For those who reflect and ponder, who possess thought, insight, and discernment, by which they can understand what is intended. So this is the key. Not just to see something and pass by it, not just to see something and understand but misunderstand, but to understand what is intended, that you understand from it. That whoever dares to commit sins against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, especially this grave immorality, will be punished by Allah with the most severe of punishments, just as they dare to commit the most heinous of sins. Right? That's Shaykh Sa'di's tafsir, referring to the action of the people of Lut, alayhi salam. Okay, so inshallah, I hope that brings some clarity. Okay, now let's look at verse 76. وَإِنَّهَا لَبِسَبِيلٍ مُقِيمٍ. Wa and inna, indeed ha, referring to the habitation of Lut alayhi salam. وَإِنَّهَا لَبِسَبِيلٍ, la, surely, certainly, bisabil, sabil is a way, right? Muqim, an established, literally means established. So Sabilin Muqim means an established path, a known road. It's not off the road. It's not like some desolate, hidden, the road less traveled. It's not that. It's the opposite of that, right? The place where this occurred lies along a known route. Okay. So this is referring to the habitation of Lut alayhi salam, that it lies along a known route, and therefore it's a prime location for deriving lessons from, because this devastated piece of land, as the theme mentions, lies on the route from the Hijaz to Syria and from Iraq to Egypt. The caravans that pass by this region witness traces of the devastation. In fact, some of these traces can be observed even today. Okay. So the habitation was an established path that was known to the Arabs. It was a path that they would traverse for their journeys. It's not, off the road, unknown, and therefore inaccessible to serve as something to take ibra from or to engage in a tawassum. Rather, it was something that, they knew about this path. They knew about this road. They traveled on this road. And therefore, the signs that remained upon it, presented something they could easily take lessons from if they were interested in that, of course. Okay, so it was known. This path was known by those who frequented those lands. Everyone who visited those regions knew that land. It was recognized by all those who traveled. Ibn Kathir mentions that this is referring clearly to the city of Sodom, the people of the city of Lut alayhi salam, which was physically and spiritually turned upside down and pelted with stones until it became a foul-smelling lake. Okay, so literally, it is the Dead Sea, right? And it is on a route that is easily accessible until today. And also in Surah number 37, verses 137 to 138, there's mention وَإِنَّكُمْ لَتَمُرُّونَ عَلَيْهِمْ مُصْبِحِينَ وَبِاللَّيْلِ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. So Allah subhanahu here addressing the people the Quran was first revealed to. Rarely you pass by them in the morning and at night, will you not then reflect? Yani there's no reason, there's no excuse that you have to not engage in reflection when this is something that a place that you're always going through, always passing through by morning and by evening. And just to repeat tafhim on this point, again, it is the smitten territory, yani the afflicted by punishment territory on the high road from Hijaz, yani Arabia, to Syria and Egypt. Travelers come across these signs of destruction, which are very prominent in the territory that lies to the southeast of the Dead Sea. The geographers are of the opinion that there is no other land on the surface of the earth which looks as desolate as its territory, especially in its southern part, subhanAllah. So, that it says so much, right? And hence the ayah that follows, 77, إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَةً لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Inna, indeed, fi, in ذَلِكَ, that, لَآيَةً, surely a sign, لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ, for the believers. The following translation is quite apparent. Verily, there is a sign in this for the believers. And just to quote Ibn Kathir for the sake of completion, all that we did to the people of Lut alayhi salam, from the destruction and the vengeance to how we saved Lut alayhi salam and his family, these are clear signs to those who believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his messengers. So subhanAllah, it shows the incredible power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well as the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like he destroyed those who deserved that punishment, he similarly saved the messengers, saved those who remain steadfast on the obedience and love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in spite of the filth and rejection that surrounded them. So indeed, and this is a sign for the believers, yani only people of faith can really appreciate the horror of the ending of their story, of those that were destroyed. It is only people of Iman who can fully realize that disobedience and rebellion against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala results in unspeakable horrors, results in their habitation, which was, normal and flourishing and, in a physical sense before it was destroyed. Now is the Dead Sea, which has 30% salinity, Yani it's 10 times saltier than the ocean itself. You know, ocean is salt water. We can't drink from the ocean, right? But this particular sea is 10 times worse in terms of its salt content than even the ocean water. And because of that high concentration of salts and minerals, the water tastes extremely bitter. The water is extremely harsh. And the various fish and aquatic plants cannot survive because the salt and mineral levels are lethal. Drinking it is so harmful. If someone tried to drink it, it can cause poisoning. Subhanallah. Isn't this such a great sign that this is beyond ocean level saltiness to the point of being lethal? We have fish in the ocean. There are, countless fish and plants in the ocean. Not so in the case of the Dead Sea. It is poisonous, not just salty, but like chemically bitter. Yes, these are certainly great signs, but for who? For the mutawassimin, for the mu'mineen who have iman. But without iman, even the biggest signs fall on deaf ears and blind eyes, right? And this is what the people of Lut alayhi salam demonstrated in their actions, is that no matter how much Lut alayhi salam called them to the right path, called them to leave off the kaba'ir, the great sins that they were involved in, it fell on deaf ears. And subhanAllah, look at the nature of the punishment of Lut alayhi salam's people, is that it begins with the sayha, right? If you recall, from last week, it was a sayha, it was a loud sound. Verse 72 mentions, فَغَذَتْهُمُ الصَّيْحَةُ مُشْرِقِينَ, right? That they were overtaken. Then the mighty blast caught them by sunrise, right? Mighty blast, yani it was a very loud blast, a very loud scream or blast. And subhanAllah, even the ears of human beings cannot stand the sound of divine punishment, cannot stand the sound of that scream or that blast which overtook them, right? And subhanAllah, I was so curious as to, look up the human tolerance of high-pitched sounds. And you'll be surprised that we can only withstand, a certain level of high sound before it becomes uncomfortable, before it becomes harmful. And how many of you have heard a chainsaw? Has anybody ever heard the sound of a chainsaw? Just curious. Or at least a thunderclap? Anybody? Yeah? I'm sure you've heard the sound of thunderclap, It's quite quite disturbing, right? Quite disturbing when you hear something like that, subhanAllah. And that's only 120 decibels, right? If you look up the level of sound that a chainsaw or thunderclap nearby presents, it's only about 120 decibels. But this is enough to trigger the pain threshold for some people. And then if you go to 130 decibels, that's the jet engine from a distance of 100 meters, or fireworks at close range. That's about 130 decibels, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it has the effect of immediate ear pain and risk of permanent damage. Risk of permanent damage, subhanAllah. So that was, just before a higher decibel range at 140 becomes unbearable and becomes even dangerous. 140 decibels is represented by a gunshot at close range or fireworks at very close range. And that causes instant pain. That causes, possible eardrum rupture. So when I think about the sound that overtook the people of Lut alayhi salam, that scream, I think of how horrible that scream was. When you hear people screaming, God forbid, if God forbid, the neighbor down the block or across your street is screaming, or there are multiple screams, may Allah protect us. It is so deeply disturbing. It is so unsettling. You cannot sleep. You cannot eat. You cannot go about functioning normally. Imagine if that's constant, or imagine if it's like much louder than what we can tolerate. Human screams we can tolerate at a physical level, but they're just so emotionally disturbing, right? And if you go beyond that, 160, 170 decibels, those are blast waves or rocket launches, which can cause permanent hearing loss, and physical injury becomes likely. And then the last one I'm going to mention, at 180 decibels and beyond, those are explosions. Those are the kinds of loud sounds that are produced by explosion shock waves, which cause damage not just to ears, but to the lungs and to the internal organs. And when I was looking this up, I couldn't help but think of the people of Gaza who are going through this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make those sounds, the last horrific sounds they hear before they hear the sweet melodies, the sweet sounds of Jannah, inshallah. Ameen. So just to recap, at 160 decibels, you have eardrum rupture occurring possibly. At 180, you have lungs being impacted. They literally disrupt or rupture the alveoli, the tiny air sacs, causing massive internal bleeding in the lungs. And there's rapid pressure change. It tears blood vessels. It damages internal organs, the brain, the stomach, intestines. SubhanAllah, this is all just from sound, right? And when we look at pictures coming out of Gaza, you see sometimes the person looks completely normal from the outside. Externally, they look unharmed. They look like they're sleeping, some of them, right? But inside, but they're dead, right? So their insides have been fatally injured. This was, really mind-boggling to me, how death from a powerful blast can happen without no major external wounds, because the damage is internal, right? And this is exactly what happens to bomb victims, blast victims, right? They appear uninjured at first glance, but they just collapse and die because their lungs, their organs have failed from the pressure shock, which is experienced at first at an auditory level, at a hearing sound level. SubhanAllah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect and free the people of Gaza and Palestine. Sheikh Saadi, of course, has incredible penetrating analysis here for how and why these represent signs for the people of Iman and for those that are mutawassimin. He says, in this story, there are profound lessons. Among them is Allah's special care for his intimate friend Ibrahim alayhi salam. Remember, they had gone to Ibrahim alayhi salam first, and then they came to Lut alayhi salam. So for Lut alayhi salam was one of his followers, okay? So how does this represent special care for Ibrahim? Well, remember, Lut alayhi salam was one of his followers. Lut alayhi salam was a follower and a relative of Ibrahim alayhi salam. He was one of the very, very few people on earth that had believed in him, okay? Lut alayhi salam had believed in Ibrahim alayhi salam. Is one of the few to do so. And he was almost like a student, Sheikh Saadi says, under his guidance. So when Allah willed to destroy the people of Lut, after that fully deserved it, he commanded his messengers to first pass by Ibrahim alayhi salam, to give him some good news first, to comfort him first, to give him glad tidings of a son first, and to let them know that this is the mission we have been sent for. This is the mission to destroy the people of Lut that we have come for. Remember when the angels come, and we read this in Surah Hud, and Ibrahim at first doesn't recognize them to be angels, and he brings food for them, and they don't eat, and he feels fear, and then they comfort him by giving him the good news, and then he asks him, what is the real purpose of your visit? Like he knew it wasn't just to tell him about the good news of the son, because they come with the truth. So SubhanAllah, I never thought about this until I read Sheikh Saadi's profound, beautiful, penetrating analysis, that it was to soften the blow on Ibrahim alayhi salam, to soften the blow of having his close, ally, relative, student, spiritual companion, to have this type of punishment inflicted on his people, on Lut alayhi salam's people, this was to soften the blow of that on Ibrahim alayhi salam. So that shows incredible care for his Khalil, right? For the Khalil of Allah. Allah showing special, intimate, close care. And we don't think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this way, but we really should, because our lives are also filled with this type of intimate, subtle care that Allah does for us, that only we can sense if we are paying attention. The care is always there. The subtle, intimate, deep care is always there. But our tragedy is that we're taking it for granted because we get used to things being a certain way from our birth and childhood. But we don't realize it's really Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, taking care of things before you can anticipate them, softening the blows, taking care of things you could not have foreseen, and so on and so forth, right? And I'm sure all of you have experienced this in your life, because this is part of Allah's being Ar-Rahman, right? It's not just the outward obvious acts of mercy, but it's also those subtle, intimate acts of mercy that no one else could have provided for, that no one could have taken into consideration, no one could have taken into account, because people not only care for us in proportion to their knowledge about us and our needs and our expectations or desires, but who can really know what we truly deeply need, those desires or needs that we have never had the courage or understanding or intimate connection with someone to voice? So no one has heard them. So how can they perceive them? It's very difficult for any human being, no matter how close they are to you, to be able to have that level of penetrating perception. But أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ. But does not the one who created know each and every one of us? And so subhanAllah, sometimes when after an experience we say, Allah is the best of planners, like Allah knows exactly what I needed, Allah did it in exactly the right order. SubhanAllah. This should really be the reflection question, which I forget to post. But if we dad can post it for me, and just like reflect on an experience you had that revealed to you Allah's intimate, meticulous care of you or your feelings or your emotions, or your expectations or your anticipations, only in a way that Allah could have been privy to and no one else. And subhanAllah, I never, ever, ever thought about this until I read this tafsir from Shaykh Saadi, how he took care of Ibrahim alayhi salam. I never thought, that's why Allah is sending the messengers to Ibrahim alayhi salam first. I just thought it was to give him the good news, and of course, Ibrahim alayhi salam is much more perceptive than us. Therefore, he asked, why are you really here? So he knew that. He knew that there's something is up. So to go back to the tafsir, he commanded his messengers to first pass by Ibrahim alayhi salam to give him glad tidings of a son and to inform him of their mission. SubhanAllah, again, it's such delicate care. It's such intimate, personal care, to care to soften the blow of something that's going to happen, right? It's when you inform someone, you let someone know in advance. It's because you're showing you have so much regard for their feelings, You care so much about their feelings that you want to control the impact, right? SubhanAllah. Ibrahim alayhi salam even pleaded with them concerning their destruction until they convinced him, and only then did his heart become content. SubhanAllah. Look at how much indulging of Ibrahim alayhi salam there is, right? That Allah knows Ibrahim alayhi salam is going to resist, because he is, so tenderhearted and so forbearing and so kind and so nice. He can never be, immediately someone who let's bring the destruction on. He was not like that. That's not who Ibrahim alayhi salam was. And then, Allah sent the angels to even, let them know that, no, this is going to happen. This is, and then there was a way that reality found contentment and submission in the heart of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So that was the first thing Shaykh Saadi mentions. The other thing that he mentions is, Likewise, as for Lut alayhi salam, since those were his own people, he might naturally have felt tenderness and pity toward them. So Allah decreed certain causes that would intensify his anger and indignation against them, until he even found the delay of their punishment burdensome when told that the appointed time is the morning, is not the morning near. Subhanallah. Amazing insight once again. It's natural to fear tenderness towards someone, no matter how much they have wronged you. When you see them crying and desperate and hurting and in pain and naked and hungry, and no matter what they've done, there's some tenderness, there's some pity that just, as human beings, kind of naturally kindles up inside of us, right? But that would have not worked out for Lut alayhi salam, because Allah's decree is final, and it doesn't come until they're fully deserving of that punishment, right? So Allah therefore decreed certain causes that would make Lut alayhi salam strong enough emotionally to see the justification of the descending punishment, so that he became entered into full alignment with the divine decree for the upcoming destruction. Another lesson is that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intends to destroy people, Shaykh Sadi says, he allows their evil and transgression to increase until once they reach the limit, he seizes them with the punishment they fully deserve. Okay? So there is definitely a delay in punishment always, right? We've seen that throughout the various stories in the Quran. And we see this now in our times as well, as people, subhanAllah, the people of Gaza being oppressed to no end, right? And it seems, we are thinking about the nasr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of us, right? But there is a limit to divine delay. And once it reaches that limit, which only Allah knows, then Allah's sunnah is that he seizes them with the punishment that they fully deserve, that we have seen throughout the Quran happen in the case of past nations. Okay. All right, let's look at 78 and 79 together, inshallah. And I think we're going to actually stop a bit early today. Yeah, actually 70 and 79 begin a new community, a new story, the people of Shu'aib alayhi salam, Ashabul Ayah. So actually I don't want to start that today. We can conclude a little bit early, and if there are any questions or comments, any clarifications, then we do have the time for that today. But officially, inshallah, I think we're going to end early just for the sake of keeping, staying on the theme for now, inshallah. Subhanaka wa bihamdika la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.